The world was a cage. At least it felt that way to Phatik. He was 14, a whirlwind of energy with nowhere to go. His village was small, the fields were familiar, the river was his only real escape. Since his mother's remarriage, the house had shrunk. It was no longer his. His stepfather's presence was a constant, quiet judgment, a shadow that fell over every corner of his life. Phatik saw the disapproval in his eyes. He heard the unspoken criticism in his mother's tired sighs. She was torn between her new husband and her old son. Phatik was the difficult piece that no longer fit the puzzle of their new life. He felt it in his bones, a deep, gnawing sense of being an inconvenience. His friends were his true family, the village boys. They understood his wild energy. They were his gang, his tribe. With them, he was not a burden. He was a leader. They would gather by the riverbank, planning mischief. Their latest scheme was a grand one. A massive log lay on the muddy bank waiting to be shaped into a mast for a boat. Phatik declared they would roll it away. It was a challenge, a show of strength, a way to carve out a moment of control in a life where he had none. The boys cheered. For a moment under the sun, surrounded by his loyal followers, Phatik felt powerful. He was not the unwanted son. He was the king of the riverbank. Then Makan appeared, his younger brother, the good son, the quiet one. Makan was everything Phatik was not. He was obedient, calm, and favored. He sat on the log, a silent protest against their game, a defiance that felt personal. Phatik's authority was challenged, in front of his friends. Humiliation burned hot in his chest. He ordered Makan to move. The boy refused. The gang watched. The simmering resentment Phatik felt at home boiled over. He commanded the boys to roll the log, with Makan still on it. A moment of petty tyranny. The log shifted. Makan tumbled into the mud. The game was over. The victory was hollow. The confrontation escalated quickly. Makan, crying with rage and mud, ran home. Phatik knew what was coming. The accusation, the inevitable punishment. He braced himself for the storm. When he arrived home, his mother's fury was immediate. She believed Makan's version of the story without question. Phatik tried to explain, but his words were lost in her anger. She saw only the troublemaker, the source of her constant worry. In that moment, the distance between them felt like a chasm. He was not her son. He was her problem. The label was seared into his soul, a brand of shame that he could not escape. He was, and always would be, the boy who caused trouble. Just as the tension in the house reached its breaking point, an unexpected visitor arrived. Bishambar, his maternal uncle. He had come from Calcutta. He saw the strained atmosphere. He heard his sister's complaints about Phatik's wildness. An idea formed, a solution, a chance for a new beginning. He offered to take Phatik back with him to the city. He would live with his cousins. He would go to a proper Calcutta school. The proposition hung in the air, filled with the promise of escape. For Phatik's mother, it was a relief. For Phatik, it was a lifeline. He agreed with an eagerness that was almost desperate. Calcutta. The name itself sounded like freedom. The departure was swift. Phatik, in his excitement, gave away his prized possessions. His fishing rod, his big kite, his marbles. These were relics of a life he was eager to leave behind. He was shedding his old skin. He imagined his new life in the city. A welcoming aunt, friendly cousins. School would be an adventure. He would finally find a place where he belonged. A place where he wasn't a constant source of disappointment. The journey to Calcutta was a dream. The bustling train, the changing landscape, the endless possibilities. He was on his way to a home that wanted him. The hope was a brilliant, shining light, blinding him to any potential darkness ahead. But the city was not a dream. It was a monster of brick and noise. His uncle's house was a labyrinth of rooms and rules, and his aunt was not the welcoming figure he had imagined. She saw him as an intrusion, another mouth to feed, an uncivilized village boy invading her sophisticated urban home. Her 3 sons already felt like too much of a burden. Phatik was an unwelcome addition to her already stressful life. Her disapproval was a cold, constant presence. It was in her sharp tones, the way she looked at his simple clothes, the way she kept him at arm's length. Phatik had traded one cage for another, only this one was colder and far more lonely. His cousins were no better. They were city boys. They found him rustic and uninteresting. They looked down on him. At school he was the outsider, the new boy from the village. The teachers found him inattentive. The students ignored him or mocked his accent. He couldn't answer the questions. The lessons were a blur. The city itself was suffocating. The tall buildings blocked out the sky. There was no river to run to, no open fields to lose himself in. He was adrift in a sea of indifferent faces. The shining hope he had carried with him from the village had been extinguished, replaced by a profound and aching alienation. He was more alone than he had ever been before. The days bled into one another, each one a copy of the last. Phatik's spirit, once so vibrant and rebellious, began to wither. He would stand on the rooftop of his uncle's house for hours, searching for something, a patch of green, a glimpse of an open field. One day, a terrible headache began. It was a dull throb that grew into a pounding torment. A fever followed, bringing with it chills that shook his entire body. He knew he was falling ill. He was terrified. He was sure he would be a nuisance to his aunt. He had to get away. He slipped out of the house, walking into the rain-soaked streets of Calcutta. He stumbled through the dark, unfamiliar streets, delirious and lost. He did not get far. The next morning, his uncle, frantic with worry, finally found him. Phatik was drenched, shivering, and barely conscious. Phatik lay in the dark room, lost in the fog of his illness. In his delirium, he spoke only of home. Finally, she arrived. She burst into the room, a storm of grief and regret. She saw her son, pale and still, his body ravaged by illness. The sight broke her. She threw herself on the bed, crying out his name. "Phatik, my darling, my darling." All the past anger, all the frustration, it all melted away, replaced by an overwhelming wave of love and sorrow. She had come too late. The boy who had been a burden was now the most precious thing in the world, and she was losing him. Phatik slowly opened his eyes one last time. He saw his mother's face. He tried to speak. His voice was barely a whisper. "Mother," he said, "the holidays have come." And then, he was silent. His homecoming was complete. Not to the village he longed for, but to a final, peaceful rest. The family had come together, but it was a gathering steeped in the profound tragedy of a love that was realized only at the very end.